Hi everyone, it's Matt from The Pen Habit. I'm glad to be back for another video. I'm going to try something a little different than I normally do. Uh, Stephen Brown does all these great disassembly line videos. I'm not sure that's something I'm really excited about getting into, but I did have a question. Figured while I've got all my stuff set up, I'd walk through a quick video on how to do this. So a while back, I reviewed the TWSBI Diamond 850, 580, excuse me, and got a question about how to maintain the pen. So let me walk you through what I do. So the pen's been inked. I've just cleaned it out, or I'm getting ready to clean it out. First thing I do, take the cap off, fill it with a little bit of water, shake it to get any ink residue off, and then making sure I've got a very solid grasp on it, I actually just flick the water out. You could also roll up a paper towel and do that, but I just flick the water out, set it down on a paper towel to dry, air dry. Next thing I will do is I run the pen underwater and extend and contract the piston several times to rinse out as much of the ink as I can. I know in piston fillers, it's really hard to get all of the ink out. So on the TWSBI in particular, and I'll explain why in just a second, I don't worry about getting all of the ink out and getting the water to run completely clear. I do this under running water and not, you've seen videos, I'm sure, of people doing it in a cup of water. I don't do that. I don't get as much water into the pen when I suck it in, just holding it under a stream of running water. But I just like that better. It's easier to clean up. It works faster for me. Once I've gotten the most of the ink out of the pen, I will take the nib unit off, and I can move over to close-up cam here. Pull the collar off. I rinse the collar off just in case and set that aside. And then I will let this soak in water, usually distilled water. If I've used the pen, if the pen's been inked for a long time, or I haven't cleaned it for a long time, I'll let the pen soak, sometimes even overnight. Now, I don't recommend that on all pens, but on this particular pen, because the nib or the feed is plastic and because of the material it's made out of, I have no problem doing that. And gold is non-corrosive, so that's not a big deal to me. After I let it soak, I will usually run additional water through it. Now, most of the time I use a bulb syringe, but on this particular pen, it's a little hard to do that because of the shape of the nipple here at the end of the nib unit. It's hard to get a bulb syringe on there. So what I do, and I'm sure I'm going to get people in the comments screaming, "Don't do that, don't do that." I do it anyway. This is not what I would consider one of my more expensive pens. So, and nibs can, TWSBI nibs can be replaced, the nib units can be replaced. So for me, this is not a big deal. I will take a big mouthful of distilled water and blow the water through the nib. I actually find that works better than using a bulb syringe, but that's just what I do. Then set the nib unit aside to air dry again. I don't put my pens away or reassemble them until they are completely dry. I have a spot on my kitchen counter that is my pen drying spot. I've got paper towels laid out and I just let my pens dry there. Once they're dry, I reassemble them, put them in my pen case. If you want to clean out the ink from the pen, there are a couple ways to do it. First of all, you can continue to pull water in and out of the pen without the nib attached. That will get you a lot of the way there. I like to use an ink syringe, and I will just inject the ink or inject clean water into this area. What I find that creates a lot of turbulence and will get some of the ink. I don't know if you can see it well here on the video, but it's got a very narrow opening. The reason they do this is, one, to help control ink flow, and two, because this will allow it to click onto the TWSBI ink wells and suck up the ink without having to dip the nib, which is kind of nifty, but it makes cleaning a little bit more problematic. So you can, if you inject water using an ink syringe into here and really put some pressure behind it, it will create a little bit of turbulence and pick up any leftover ink. Then I will do the same thing. I will shake the pen out, get a little bit of centrifugal/centripetal force. I don't know the difference between the two because I'm a product of the American education system. Oh boy, I'm going to get letters on that. If you want to go a little bit more in depth, you can take TWSBI pens apart. That's one of the neat things about TWSBI pens. They are meant to be taken apart and maintained, and TWSBI even provides you the tools to do that. So on the underside of your TWSBI case, you get a wrench and a little bottle of silicone grease. So now let me go ahead and show you how to take the pen apart, maintain it with it taken apart, and put it back together. And it can be just a touch tricky on this pen to do. So let me show you how that's done. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and extend the piston all the way down. So you know, like you're getting ready to fill up the pen. You'll notice it opens up a gap here at the top of the pen. Take the wrench that's included and twist, you know, just go around until you find how it locks into place. Twist the opposite direction you'd think you'd want to go to tighten. So if you twist it as though you think you were tightening it, and you'll actually loosen it. They do this on purpose so you don't, so the piston and the goes the opposite way from disassembling the pen. You can pull this whole unit off, and this unit consists of the cap, a little flange, and we'll come back to this in just a second, and this joint that both screws into the pen and connects to the cap. So this is kind of the pivot. That's not pivot point, but it's where the work happens. Now you'll notice I got my piston stuck in the pen here. So if that happens to you, just take the flange and you can actually screw it onto the piston, grab a hold of it, and pull it out. Pretty easy. So while you've got the pen open, you can go the opposite direction. Let's say you put some Bay State blue in here and stained the inside of the piston, wanted to see if you could fix anything, get rid of those stains. So, you know, maybe Q-tips with a little bit of bleach, 10% bleach in water. That'll, or, you know, so clean it out, maybe some pen flush, you can shake it around, let it dry on its own. When you really clean the pen like that, though, one of the things you're going to deal with is the piston has a little rubber gasket on it that keeps the ink from leaking out the back end of the pen and creates the suction to pull the ink into the pen. This will kind of start to stick against the inner wall of the pen if you don't lubricate it every now and again. Now, I like to lubricate this, not this. If you have a piston filler that's hard to take apart, you can lubricate the inner wall of the piston filler. I don't prefer to do that with pens you can take apart, because I think, especially on demonstrators, it can start to look really sloppy, as is evidenced in the video I did on the FPR Dilly, which I posted a few videos back. You could see the silicone grease on the inside. It looked sloppy. So in this particular case, what you want to do is grab your silicone grease that comes with your pen, or you can order it from a whole host of pen companies. Goulet Pen Company, I think Anderson Pens sells it. Very light amount of silicone grease on the outside of the piston here. And if you want, you can even grease the thread slightly. You don't have to necessarily, but you can. I also like to take the opportunity to grease these threads, only to make them mesh well. Theoretically, if this is well greased, ink shouldn't get behind it, so you don't need to worry about ink leaking out. But just in case, I like to grease the threads a little bit as well. Putting it back together. Once you've got everything greased, putting it back together. This can get a little bit tricky, so let me show you how I do it. Take the joint and the flange. You can stick the flange in the joint here. Then what I do is I take the cap, and you'll see here you've got threads that run down the side. I don't know how well you can see this on the video. There are threads that run down the side of the cap side of the joint to this little flange. What you want to do is screw the cap on until you just barely can't see the threads anymore, just right until the cap gets to the flange. It'll still be loose, and that's okay. Then grab both the joint and the cap, and on the other side, you want to take the piston and put it into the slot there. Once the piston's in the slot, you finish closing up the cap, and there you go. The way you'll know you've done it correctly is if the cap comes to rest against the flange right here, and I'll see if I can show you, comes to rest against the flange right here, and there's only a tiny little gap between the piston and the bottom of the joint on this end. If you've done that, you're in great shape. Then what I do is unscrew it partially, take the pen, push the piston in until the threads mesh up, and then you take your wrench and go in the opposite direction you think you would want to go to tighten. And once you do that, it'll lock in place. Now, I would say tighten it don't over tighten it because you could crack the plastic on this and you wouldn't want to do that just for the sake of tightening it. Then you can twist it, make sure everything is working properly. It sure seems to be. If you put a little bit of grease on the gasket, continue to do this a couple times just to get everything lubed up properly. And then you can go ahead and reattach the nib unit, and you are back in business with your TWSBI Diamond 580. So if you have any questions or any methods that you like to use rather than these, please let me know in the comments below or on penhabit.com. I will, I'm not, like, as I mentioned, I'm not sure I'm going to do a lot more of these because I'm not a huge fix-it guy when it comes to pens. I don't take my pens apart all that often. I know, if you're really into that sort of thing, check out Stephen Brown's disassembly line. He's got a ton of amazing videos on how to take apart your pens, including specialty tools you need and knockout blocks and that sort of thing. So that's really not an area of big interest for me. So if that's something you're interested in, check out Stephen Brown's channel. And, if you have any questions or suggestions on easy to take apart pens, I'm happy to walk you through little things like that. So thank you again for watching. We'll see you here next time on The Pen Habit. Bye.